I was on my Instagram the other day and one of my followers DM'd me and he was like, you know what would be a great video is if you explained how much money it cost you to travel to 100 countries. And I'm like, that's genius, because I do get asked a lot how much it cost me, but also I never really answer because I didn't know myself. Like, I knew it was a lot, but I never calculated down to the exact number of what it was. So I've spent like the last 2 days doing that, looking at my bank statements from last year, and I have booked every hotel I've ever stayed at through booking.com or Expedia. So when you're a member of either of those, they log all your trips. So I was able to go back and calculate all my hotel stays up and all my flights, because I bought my flights on Expedia. So I was able to go back and see exactly how much I've got, and then I kind of estimated with food and activities, so, and bus tickets. So I'm gonna break down everything that I'm gonna break down all the expenses throughout the video. I know there's gonna be those people that are like, she says the exact amount and then you put the timestamp, like those annoying people, okay, that won't let us live a little bit, okay. But yeah, I'm gonna explain, because I know there's gonna be a ton of explaining that needs to be done, and this way a lot of people don't have a lot of questions. So yeah, if you're interested in knowing how I finance, if that's what you want to call it, visiting 100 countries, then keep on watching. And make sure you follow me on Instagram, because I literally talk to you guys and post every single day on my Instagram stories. Just get into it. Okay, so let's kind of talk about how I even decided to go on a challenge. A lot of people are confused about that, or like, was I with a group? Was I with an organization? What was going on? MJ had a dream. One night I had a dream that I went around the world by myself, and I woke up and all of a sudden I wanted to go on like a challenge to see how many countries I could visit in a year's time. Literally, that's all it was. I was with no organization. I was with nobody even knew who I was. Like, I don't even know, like, I didn't even have, like, I had a little following on the internet. Like, yeah, there wasn't much going on. It was just me wanting to do it, and I didn't even do it for YouTube. I did it for myself, but I decided to document it because one day when I have kids, they can all see my experiences and everything, and that's like the coolest part about social media. Like, so I had lived in China previously. You guys can go watch my other story times about that. 这个多小？多小？
这种45。
45。
就这个要不啦？
啊，不要了。嗯。谢谢。
好的。
谢谢你。
好的。
我的家一共有8个人。8个人，还有个姐姐。对，还有3个弟弟。3个弟弟。But I was living in China with my sister, and then oh my gosh, there's a motorcycle outside of it for myself. And at the time I was living in, and so China is really close to, well, I live in Shanghai, and Shanghai is really close to a lot of other countries, and it's really cheap, really affordable flights. So I would fly to Thailand for super cheap and make a vacation out of it, because when I first went to China, my visa was every 30 days I had to leave China. I could come right back. I literally just had to step into another country and then come back to China. So I used to turn the every 30 days into little trips. And then I was like, I used to watch a lot of travel videos. I used to watch a lot of Los LeBlanc, and he traveled around like Southeast Asia and made videos out of it, so it inspired me to do it. So I started making videos out of it, on my iPhone and it was really fun. And then I started to get, you know, views. My views started to pick up. So I'm like, you know what, I could like turn this into a job. Like, and it's not a job, but like at the time I wasn't thinking it was gonna be a job. At the time I was thinking, well, it could be how I make money to keep traveling, because at the time I was making zero money and I had so much debt from student loans from college. And it's so funny because sometimes, like, once this popular Instagram page shouted me out and it said 23-year-old visits 100 countries like at the age of 23, or it said like girl visits 100 countries at 23 years old in less than a year or something like that. And so I was looking through the comments of that picture and a lot of people were saying, yeah, she's doing so because she's rich and that's what rich people do. But like the rest of us have jobs to uphold and we have student loans because we live in reality and we don't come from money and we have to work for things. And I'm like, people don't know like a darn thing about what they're talking about these days. Like, they just pick whatever they want to believe and then choose to believe it. When I say there was no money to my name, okay? I lived in China with my sister at a hostel for the first 6 months. We lived at a hostel. So we shared a bed with, we shared a bunk bed. My sister was on the top bunk, I was on the bottom bunk, and there were like 8 other travelers that always rotated in and out. That's how broke we were. We lived in a hostel. A hostel that was like $10 a night in China for the first like 6 months before we got our own apartment. But my sister was a model, but if you model, you know, models don't make that much money, and even in the beginning you don't make that much money. You could be like where everybody else on the outside is looking at you like, whoa, that girl is like getting great jobs. Like, she'd work with really, really, really big brands, you know. Christina, that's you.
Right,
You know what? I'm over her. Let's see if she's inside as well. Oh, she's inside as well. Oh my god. Look, it's her. Christina, get over here. Christina, can you get over here, please? Nothing. 1, 2, 3.
Great.
Christina, how you feel about the pictures? There she is. There she is. Oh my god. I need this thing turn. It's her. And right there too. Hey, look, let's spread the bagel. I almost worked there when I first moved here. You know, she do runways, and me and my sister would always be walking around Shanghai, and then I just see like a billboard with my sister on it, or like I'd be walking around in the mall with like all the designer stores, and I'd see my sister on front of like designer stores. You know, I'd see her all over Shanghai. She was huge at the time, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're making that much money. If you model, you know that. So we were starving in the beginning, and like literally we were so broke. Like, we used to have to share. We would go and buy a bag of apples because fruit in Asia is so freaking good. I'm not even a huge apple fan, but the apples in China are just like, oh my, they change your life. Me and my sister used to go buy a bag of apples. They'd be like 6 kwai for a bag, which is like $1 US, and we'd literally eat that for our breakfast, lunch, and dinner sometimes, because that's how broke we were. So yeah, I had worked my butt off before going to China. I had the job, I worked at a factory, a donut factory, and I worked sometimes 27 hour shifts. I used to cry every time I'd get off work from my body being in so much pain. I was like the only female who worked at that factory because females couldn't handle it was very labor intensive and females couldn't handle it. I could barely handle it. I'm not strong at all. I have no upper body strength. But like if I have a goal, I'll do whatever I have to do. That's how I kind of got enough money to go to China in the first place. I worked like 6 months straight, and then I saved all my money to go to China. So I had that money like for using in China, but I still had to be frugal. And so every 30 days in the beginning I had to leave. So I would fly to like Thailand, I'd fly to South Korea a lot, I'd fly to Japan a lot, like Tokyo, because the flights were really cheap from Shanghai. It's great being in Asia because flights around Asia are really cheap once you're in Asia. So that's what I started doing, and I started putting on my Snapchat, and then a lot of people were like, you should start a YouTube channel and like vlog this and blah blah blah. So that's how it all started. So then my views started to pick up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be like a way I can make money to, one, pay off my student loans, and then 2, I could keep traveling if I can like pick up a following on YouTube, and like it's a perfect idea. So I had decided to leave China for a bit. I decided to leave China to kind of pursue traveling as a job. So I asked my sister like, can you just travel with me around to help me take videos and pictures, because I'm really trying to pursue YouTube and, you know, Instagram like as a job, and it's a way like I can keep going, keep traveling. And she's like, yeah. So we started off in Bali, and then we went to we traveled to Malaysia, then we went to Singapore, then I went to Cambodia, Thailand, both Phuket and Bangkok, and Laos. And I started to check a lot of countries off my list, and I love collecting things, and I would collect a patch from each country, and I started to have a collection, and like I was being inspired by myself to like keep going. And I'm like, you know what, there's this such a small world. A lot of people see the world as big. I see it as quite small, and I'm like, this is such a tiny world. I could do the whole thing. I'm like, I could do this. So I set myself on a challenge, and I'm like, I want to visit 30 countries in 1 year. And it's so funny because when I announced that challenge, so many of my subscribers that I had at the time were like, oh wait, don't be overzealous, slow down. I was 21, I think. They're like, you're only 21. I'm 23 now. They're like, or I was 22, I don't remember. You're only 21, or yeah, I was 22. You're only 22. Most people in their life haven't been to 30 countries. So that's when I was like, you know what, people want to say I can't visit 30 countries, I'm gonna do 50. So then I announced, you know what, I'm not doing 30, I'm doing 50, and people were just like basically laughing at me at that point. And then I saw how easily I traveled around Asia. Well, it wasn't easy, it was very hard. But once I kind of saw how I like figured out in my brain to do it, I was like, I think I can apply the same logic to Europe. So I kind of planned out like how to take on one continent at a time. And at the time I was making around 3,000 to 5,000 on YouTube. And that was very easy to stay afloat in Asia, because Asia is not that expensive, or it doesn't have to be that expensive is what I'm saying. So some countries like Hong Kong and parts of, well, Shanghai, parts of China, and a few other places are expensive, but like Southeast Asia is very cheap if you want it to be. Obviously, if you want to stay in nicer places and do nicer things, it can be expensive. I thought that Europe was going to be as cheap as Asia traveling around. That's not true, but I didn't know that in the beginning. So then I had flown to Paris after I kind of conquered Asia and had done almost every single country too. Yeah, maybe Brunei is the only country in Asia I haven't been to. Yeah, I think that's the only one. So then I moved to Paris so that I could do Europe. And I was going to apply the same method I had in Asia, which is kind of stay in very cheap hotels or hostels, or very cheap Airbnbs, and then bus to each country, which was, oh my goodness, amazing, because in Europe they have very loose borders. So yeah, European countries have very loose borders. Well, most of them, like Poland, Germany, France, Spain, Czech Republic, Albania, Montenegro, Macedonia, Bosnia Herzegovina, Croatia. I just took this company called Flixbus, me and my brother, and the Flixbus tickets are literally like $20 each. So it was so simple getting around Europe. Very, very, very cheap. I always tell people, if you want to travel and you really want to knock out a lot of countries and you don't have that much money, go to Europe. You can do it for very cheap. Now you're gonna have to be frugal because Europe can be expensive, but there's a way to do it where you don't have to spend a ton of money, because is like Paris, London, Sweden, Finland, Iceland. Those countries are a different type of expensive. I remember one time I was in Paris and I got a cab to my Airbnb, and the cab ride was maybe 20 minutes and my cab was almost $100. It was ridiculous. I was so happy that I had $100 on me because there's a lot of times I didn't even have that much money in my account. So a lot of people ask me like tips on money when it comes to wanting to go on a challenge or wanting to travel. Oh my gosh, how can I get enough money to do it? What are some saving tips? How did you budget? What are some tips on, you know, being smart at planning? And I'm like, you guys, you're way ahead of me. I did not budget anything. Like, I can't tell you how many times I got like the email like, your account is overdrawn. Are you kidding me? Budgeting? Who? I don't budget. I didn't budget anything. I was like, a lot of people, like even my brother at times was like, what you're doing makes no sense. Like, I didn't even have enough money to buy a coat. You guys saw, like, I wore the mess out of that red hoodie that you guys saw me wear for months and months and months. That hoodie doubled as a cover when we were on those long bus rides from country to country. It doubled as like a blanket sometimes when we were staying in a really cheap hotel that didn't have, you know, heat. It doubled as my coat. You know, you guys saw me climb the Andes Mountains and it was a snowstorm and it was like negative 50 degrees and all I had on was a hoodie. And a lot of people were like, girl, you need a coat. I'm like, you gonna buy me a coat? I didn't have enough money for a coat. And I, the last year, had spent, see, booking.com keeps all the hotels you've ever been to tracked. You can keep loading them, so every hotel I've ever been to is still on my booking account right here, and so I can look into how much I spent last year on my hotels. And I spent $56,000 on hotels. So $56,000 on hotels, and then I can look at my flights, and I spent around $30,000 on my flights altogether last year. And I kind of calculated in buses. I couldn't look at like bus statements, or I couldn't find the buses because I just bought them so sporadically, and some of them I bought with cash, but it was around, I kind of factored that in as well. And then I'm gonna kind of add in food and activities that I did, so I spent around $94,000 last year in 332 days traveling around the world. And it's so funny because I'd get like sponsorship opportunities, like brands that would reach out to me to be like, oh, can you like do this video for us and we'll pay you this amount. And they didn't even know that they were like paying for like my lunch or like my food that month, or like my coat that I would have, or I didn't ever have a coat, but you know what I'm saying. Like, that's how I stayed afloat for the most part. And you guys have no idea how many phone calls I made to family members about, you know, can I borrow this? I'll pay you back. Can I borrow this? You know what I'm saying? So that is the amount it cost me to travel to 100 countries.